Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 2 of SPED 266, Building Professional Family Partnerships. This week, we are going to talk about culturally responsive family engagement, kind of what that looks like and how we can implement that into our classrooms. The objectives for this week are to understand culturally responsive family engagement, to be able to identify core competencies for equitable engagement, and analyze how power, culture, and systems shape family-school relationships, and also being able to apply strategies to improve practice in schools. So let's begin. Why family engagement matters? Because it has been shown through research that strong family-school partnerships are going to improve the academic achievement of your students, it's going to increase their attendance, and it's going to reduce those maladaptive behaviors in the classroom. Additionally, engagement is not just about showing up, involvement, right? It's about really relational, reciprocal, and ongoing relationships with the parents. Again, not just attending events, but really getting to know who your parents are and who your students are. So there's been a shift between this traditional way classrooms were run and families have been engaged to this more culturally responsive engagement. Traditional models were very school-centered. It was the parents' responsibility to ask what was going on. It was one-way communication. The teacher would say something, and that would be it. And it was more, like I said, come to us rather than the teachers going to the parents. What we have learned and what research has shown is that culturally responsive classrooms are family-centered, right? This kid has a family at home, they've got a school teacher, and they need to work together in order to create academically strong, confident students. It's a two-way partnership. If parents see things going on at home or their kid is struggling, they need to let that teacher know so the teacher knows how to adapt how the school day is going to look. And teachers are now meeting students where they are rather than just expecting them to be automatically where they want them to be. So culturally responsive family engagement is grounded in equity and inclusion. For especially our special ed folks, we know what this looks like, right? We are trying to include not just the students, but the family as well. It's responsive to cultural, linguistic, and community contexts. And it's focused on a shared power and voice. It's not the teacher knows everything, the teacher knows best. It's that we as adults are going to work together for what's best for our student. The parents deal with the students every day at home, every weekend, 24 hours a day, right? So they probably know their students pretty well, or their kids pretty well. So as teachers, we can seek out that information and try to better understand where our students are coming from. And so there's been this big shift between deficit thinking to asset-based thinking. And that deficit thinking is looking at a student who is struggling and being like, oh, well, they're just not smart enough, or they come from a bad family home, or they have low socioeconomic status, so that is why they are struggling in the classroom. Asset-based thinking is understanding that families have strength and bring knowledge into the classroom and into their students. It's saying that, oh my gosh, the student has had to overcome so much and look where they are now. It's reframing that families are not hard to reach. Maybe they just don't understand, or maybe I need to adapt how I am going to communicate with them so that they can be more included. Because schools, let's be honest, can be hard to access, right? It's a lot of jargon that people outside of schools don't understand. There's a lot of legal parameters, there's a lot of legal jargon, and so schools can be really hard to access, especially if you have a really intense secretary, right? They don't let anybody in. So we really have to take a step back and realize this is a hard environment to break through. So how can I make it more engaging and more easily accessible to my parents? So the articles that we had to read this week outlined 8 main competencies for equitable engagement, and they're grouped into themes. And that first one being equity and cultural responsiveness. Second, relationship building. 3, communication and collaboration. And 4, systems and advocacy. And we're going to get into each one of these. So equity and cultural awareness is the idea that we need to recognize biases and systematic inequities, that we need to acknowledge them, and we need to make sure that we are teaching around them. We need to understand cultural identities and lived experiences. And I want to focus on those lived experiences because we need to understand that every child has a different lived experiences. And we can't come into a classroom with expectations for students if we have not taught them the skills that are required to meet that expectation. And so we need to understand that those lived experiences can affect a student's levels of abilities. And an add-on insight to the articles was that implicit bias influence that we need to be made aware of, that discipline referrals tend to be higher for Black students, for students with emotional and behavior disorder. Parent interactions can be different based on those implicit biases, right? That some cultures tend to not be confrontational or not seek further clarification, that they're more of a passive group. And so being made aware of that. And again, are those expectations appropriate for the students and families that we are working with? One of the next kind of concepts was that relationship building. Trust is built over time. It's not something that it immediately comes. I'm not going to immediately walk in a classroom and trust my child's teacher. It's not going to happen. That needs to be built and that needs to be earned. We need to engage parents as if they are parents, not clients, right? We are not their boss. We are not working for them. We are working with them. And like I said, trust is slow cooked. It's not microwaved, right? It takes time. It takes effort. It takes communication. It takes engagement. So some strategies to help build these relationships are home visits. If your district or schools allow it, home visits, I can't tell you how beneficial a home visit is. It really gives you insight to what that student goes home to every day and what they're coming to school with in their backpack, right? What baggage they're bringing into the classroom. You get to see that in the home visits. And that could be good baggage and it could be really challenging baggage, but we need to know what we're dealing with. Having a community presence. You're available for events at the school. Maybe you're going to the 5K walks where your students are going to be. And consistent follow through. I say this all the time as teachers, that we have to follow up with our students. If we say we're going to do something, do it. This is the same thing for our parents. If we say something, we need to do it. If I tell you, hey, I'm going to give you a note every day after school about your child's behavior, I am going to make sure I do that because that's what's going to build the trust and that's what's going to build the relationship. Next kind of theme that was presented in the reading was communication. It needs to be accessible and it needs to be in inclusive language. IEP jargon is not for the everyday human, right? It's legal. It's legal terms that you had to take courses in to understand, right? Most parents haven't taken these same courses. So you need to break it down for them and put it into language that they understand and potentially in their own language as well, right? That multilingual materials. Maybe it needs to be in Spanish. Maybe it needs to be in Hmong, but we need to make it so that the parents can understand the language and can interpret what that message is trying to say. Make sure you're making flexible meeting formats. Most parents and most adults work 8 to 5, so you calling them at 3:30 is not conducive to them. Maybe you have to work a little bit late one day a week so that you can make those phone calls and be able to actually have a conversation with the parents. Maybe asking them or doing a poll at the beginning of the year, like, hey, what's the best way for me to reach you? Do you prefer text message? Do you prefer emails? So that they know that you are interested in what they have to say and you're trying to meet them where they are at. And very similar to our students, we need to listen before we advise, right? Listen to what's going on, understand where they're coming from, and then provide information to support them. So advocacy and system change was another theme within the reading. Like I just said, special ed is a complex, challenging world. There are so many things, so many services, so many requirements that need to be met. And so you need to support your families with navigating this really challenging environment. And you need to be sure that you're advocating for equitable policies. And this could be something as simple as, the student might need mental health services or therapeutic services, or gosh, I've noticed some OT issues, or hey, I noticed that little Billy hasn't brought a lunch every day. Let me make sure that we are getting them lunch for during the school day. So meet them where they are at and provide policies that support all of our students. And we need to shift from individual effort to this is a system that we are trying to create for the student, right? I'm not just helping one student. I'm working with the families. I'm working with the service providers. I'm working with admin to make sure that everyone is providing a great environment for each and every one of my students. So some common barriers to family engagement that come up are language differences, right? Especially in some of our bigger districts, we are working with many different types of languages. Districts are required to provide interpreters and provide materials in the native language of our families. So make sure that that is something that we are conquering with that common barrier. Like I said earlier, work schedules can be quite challenging to navigate. So maybe one day a week you decide that that's going to be your late day so that you can make those phone calls and have those meetings with parents that work that 9 to 5 job or 8 to 5 job. We need to also keep in mind that parents and students might be coming in with a lot of past negative experiences in schools, some of that baggage, right? Maybe they had parents that were maybe they had teachers that were mean to their student or dismissive of their student or dismissive of them. So we need to be aware of that and try to counteract that. We mentioned it earlier, those institutional biases. We need to be aware of those and make sure that we are not supporting those or engaging in those, and instead counteracting those institutional biases. Schools often define engagement too narrowly. Hey, you need to contact your parents once a week, or hey, you need to message your parents once a month, whatever that might look like. And so we need to move past that and be better than that. Those are usually minimum requirements. We want to do the maximum every time. For the equity lens in practice, we need to ask ourselves who is being heard, who is missing, and who holds the decision-making power, right? A lot of times in IEP meetings, sometimes the parents don't even talk. So are they being heard? Are they missing out in this IEP? And ultimately, are they the ones that make the big decisions? They are. So why are they not being heard? Why are they missing in this IEP? We need to get them involved. If the same voice is dominating, it's not engagement. It's a representation imbalance. And so what do we need to do to get the parents involved? Do we need to have pre-meetings so that their voice can be heard? Do I need to set a specific time on the agenda for the parents to be able to have a conversation about what's going on with their student? Do the parents want me to speak on their behalf? And I've had a meeting to know exactly what's being discussed or what they want discussed. So we need to ask those questions to make sure that everyone is a participant in the IEP. Maybe it's the student. Is the student being heard? Is the student missing in the IEP, right? Maybe the parents hold the decision-making power, but is the student being heard? So some practical strategies to counteract those barriers. As I mentioned, co-create events with families, right? Try to have opportunities where you get to engage with parents on not just a education line, but maybe it's a school carnival or a school baseball game. Create those events where you can engage with families. Use community liaisons. Offer flexible participation options. Maybe it's Zoom. Maybe it's, hey, we'll meet in your area that you live in. We'll bring you to the school. At my old school, we used to have a van and we used to go pick up parents so that they could attend the IEP meetings. Build relationships before problems arise. It is the worst when your first phone call to a parent is something that's going wrong. Never going to end well, right? It's much better to start that relationship, build on the positives so that they know when you do come to them with a problem, it's serious and you're on their side. So if we can do all of these things, we will see a higher engagement with our students. We'll see a stronger identity develop. We'll see an increased sense of belonging. And students' experiences, that alignment between home and school worlds will be very succinct. They know that if something happens at school, they'll have that consequence not only at school, but maybe at home too. If they're not performing well at home, maybe there's that lateral consequence at school as well. But that everyone is on the same page. We are working together as a team. And this will create just an overall better human. So some discussion questions to ask yourself as you read the articles and as you work through this week's materials is, how does your current setting define family engagement, right? How does your school define family engagement? How does your classroom define family engagement? Who benefits from this definition? Is it the school? Is it just covering themselves from any potential lawsuit, or is it actually benefiting the parents? And with this definition, who might be excluded? Could it be the grandmas? Could it be godparents? Could it be the CASA workers or the foster parents? Who is being excluded from this? So some final takeaways from this week is family engagement must be culturally responsive to be equitable. Relationships are the foundation. And I want to say this one more time. Relationships are the foundation. Not only the relationship between you and the student, which is absolutely crucial, and the number one reason kids do well in school is the relationship they have with their teacher, but also the relationship with the family, with the caregivers. Systems, not just individuals, must change, right? Everybody needs to change. The administration needs to change. Parents need to be more receptive. Teachers need to be more receptive, right? Systems have to change in order for success to be had. And families are partners with expertise. They know their kids. They know what's going on. So go to them and ask them for help. And my closing quote, engagement isn't inviting families into our system. It's redesigning the system so that families already belong. Mic drop. All right, you guys, thank you so much for this week. If you guys need anything, you always reach out. We are here for you and get those assignments turned in. Have a good week.